Good afternoon. It's McCollum on Business. I'm Stephen McCollum, and for the next 30 minutes or so, I'm going to get you set up on what's happening around the business world. We'll look at what's happening in terms of the tariffs, China stuff as well. Some breaking news here. So, kind of the markets might have changed here in the last 30 minutes or so leading up to showtime. We'll have to check into that. Stocks we're paying attention to, plus national and local stories that you need to know, getting you ready here on this Thursday. One more day until the weekend coming up here. So, see what happens out there. But one of the things that's changing on the market as we go into the market watch here is bad loans are becoming a big concern around the banking industry. A lot of banking stocks over the last few days have kind of taken a hit. And now we have a couple bankruptcies in the loan market side of things. And so that's affecting the stock market as this day has gone on. And with that, let's get into that market watch. There were early gains today, and they are all gone as of right now. And part of that reason, bad loans in that banking industry, as I was just telling you about. Big change here. It's we can talk a little bit about that as the day goes on. But Dow Jones is down 307 points right now. 45,955 for the Dow. S&P 500's up 52 points. I'm sorry, down 52 points. 66.18. I don't know why I keep saying up when everything's down today. Nasdaq's down 78 points to 22,590. The Russell 2K, that small cap index, 2471 is what it's trading at now, down 55 points here. And then Bitcoin, not much better. That continues to sell off as well. 107,908 for Bitcoin. This morning, when I was driving in, before I was driving in, I was getting ready and doing some prep work, and Bitcoin at that point was trading at 111,000. So you can see it's down that 28.96 here today, and it's just the market sell-offs, bad loans in the banking industry, the government shutdown shakeoffs. The Fed is meeting here coming up as well. There's some disagreement in that circles. One Fed chairman came out that has voting rights and said, the new one that Trump just put on, said he wants a half a point cut. Another one came out and said he prefers a quarter point cut. So all of this stuff is happening right now, and just the markets are roiled and rankled here today as we were talking about them. So stocks we're going to pay attention to, well, some of these might have changed here, but F5 is the first one we're going to look at. We looked at these guys yesterday as well. They're a cybersecurity provider. Yesterday, they were down 5 to 6 points here when we were talking about them here on the show. Today, another 12.26%. Well, a cybersecurity firm, I argued yesterday, when your job is to keep people secure in the cyber world and you fail on your own and your stuff gets cut into, well, it's a very, very bad look out there. Well, market's agreeing with me, at least so far, with the 12.26% down again today. Well, the company came out and they disclosed that nation-state actor, meaning another country, gained access to its systems. We knew about that yesterday, and that's why it was down yesterday. However, bigger digging into this, right? The famous people familiar with the matter, well, they told Bloomberg News that the breach was potentially catastrophic for F5. And again, cybersecurity provider having a potentially catastrophic cyber attack on it is not positive news here. And so F5, another bad day here on the market. Next up, we're going to look at ARM Holdings is the stock we're going to look at. Well, it's up 0.88% right now. You see kind of the ups and downs of it here today. Well, they said they reached a multi-year deal with Meta, the parent company of Facebook, WhatsApp, etc., to scale AI efficiency across every layer of compute. So it's going to span AI software and data center infrastructure. And they're doing all that to enable richer user experiences, is what ARM said in their statement. ARM Holdings did. They're up 0.82%, announcing that agreement today. And let's throw up as our third stock Meta Platforms as well, since obviously Meta involved in here. And they were up earlier today on the news, as you can see on the graph to your left. On the left side of the graph, well, it's down 1.17% here today with the bigger sell-off that's occurring as the day has gone on. So basically, we've done this show in terms of writing it and getting ready for it twice today, right? One when the market was up, And now with the market trading down here with all of this news, Treasury yields just came up about 10 minutes ago. Treasury yields are trading in the 4% range right now, folks. Lowest it's been since April of a couple years ago out there, which means, and mortgage rates might be falling a little bit as that is happening out there. So a lot of movement here and big government stuff happening here this afternoon, which gets us into our stories that we're going to talk about today. Obviously, we can't start a day without government shutdown. Here's the update on the government shutdown. Well, the Senate voted again, did not get enough votes to reopen the government, so they stay closed here as usual. There's no end in sight. I saw our senator from Arizona, Senator Kelly, saying President Trump needs to get involved in this conversation to help solve it. So that is happening right now. And then we got the trade side of things. U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer came out yesterday and said that China, and of course, China's a big battle going on in terms of the tariffs, but China's recent restrictions on those rare earth material exports, well, they said it was a global supply chain power grab. It was how they phrased it. Now, the Treasury Secretary that you see on the screen there, Scott Bessent, and Greer, they spoke to reporters at the Treasury Department in Washington. Bessent said in that same meeting that Beijing's actions amounted to a provocation. The remarks are obviously continuation of the fact that U.S. China trade talks and the relationship, it just continues to deteriorate as we continue to move on. Every day it's something worse and worse. Beijing surprised announced everybody last Thursday of those new limits on those rare earth materials exports and even related technologies they went into as well. So, as you know, if you watch this show, which I know you all do, President Trump threatened to impose 100% tariffs on China last Friday, as well as export controls on any and all critical software to China as well, and kind of in retaliation. He even said that there might not be a meeting between the two presidents coming up. You might call that up. Well, the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs came out and said that the export controls were consistent with international practice and they had been implemented, quote, to better safeguard world peace and regional sustainability and fulfill non-proliferation and other international obligations, unquote. I did see also that China came out earlier today, and I got that story right here. I'm going to pull this up here, that China is saying that the Trump administration is responsible for those export uh, limits as well that China's putting on. This is all just hand wringing and everybody trying to get the upper hand here as these talks continue on. The only way China can avoid the new tariffs coming out here, those 100% ones Trump is supporting, Greer said it's to drop the proposed export controls. Bessent and Greer were cautiously optimistic that Beijing would back down and return to the negotiation table, and we'll have to wait and see. And if not, President Trump's going to respond. And where do we stand? And market does not like this type of talk, especially between the two biggest economies in the world right now. So that's happening behind the scenes. That's continued to escalate between China and the U.S., the government shutdown. Well, then we got the Office of Management Budget talking here. The director of that agency, Russell Voigt, he appeared on the Charlie Cook show yesterday, and I told you, kind of gave you the headline on this as it popped up yesterday during the show. But he said that the administration's effort to cut the federal workforce in the midst of the shutdown, he said is likely to grow beyond the 4,000 workers who've already received reduction in force notices thus far. The reduction in force notices are also called RIFs, if you hear that term. The White House budget chief said the Trump administration wants to go beyond cutting back the workforce to even closing down parts of the federal bureaucracy in total. The administration's efforts to cut the workforce through layoffs were temporarily blocked, though, after this conversation was had. Yeah, it was blocked by a federal court ruling yesterday. Well, they said you cannot lay these people off. And yesterday, the headline was also up to 10,000 jobs lost in the government before you get to those shutdowns. So, the government shutdown, the threats of layoffs, everybody's already been furloughed, but the threats of layoffs are real. And that judge came out and said, hey, you cannot lay off people or do anything in the federal government while this works through the court system, was that federal court ruling. And I'm sure it's going to be appealed all the way up like they always are. So now we have those battles starting to happen in court and everything. And even it's not just we're talking about federal government level right now, but how's it affecting the state side of things? Well, one way we know how the states are being, messed with or trying to figure out. And yes, this has to do with the government shutdown, but it also has to do with the Trump administration stopping a lot of the funding that's been going on all over the country. And states are clawing and scratching and hurrying up to win their share of that new $50 billion rural health fund that's available. Helping rural hospitals, well, it was originally envisioned, to the money was help out the rural people that don't have a lot of money, less people going into them, etc. But it's becoming an idea that's kind of going away out there. So what's happening is states have to submit applications that rebuild and reshape how healthcare is delivered in rural communities. You have to write an essay, basically. Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services official Abe Sutton came out and said last month, if you remember, we told you here at McCollum on Business, that he is simply changing the way government pays hospitals because the old way has been tried and he says has failed, is what he said at that time. He also told the audience of more than 40 governor's office staffers and state health agency leaders, he told them all of that stuff, some as far away as Hawaii, all the rural people, and he's basically saying what we're doing now isn't working. So they're changing this up to we have to write an essay for this fund. The problem is there going to be enough money? Rural hospitals and clinics everywhere in the United States face a looming financial catastrophe. President Trump's massive tax and spending law, that big, beautiful bill, is expected to slash federal Medicaid spending on healthcare in rural areas by $137 billion over the next 10 years. Congressional Republicans added the one-time 5-year Rural Health Transformation Program as a last-minute deal to win over the support of conservative holdouts who had worried about the bill's financial fallout for those rural communities. So that's where you get this $50 billion deal. Half of the $50 billion will be divided equally among all states with an approved application. The other half, well, it's going to go to states that win points, based off of the applications. Of the second half, $12.5 billion will be allotted based on a formula that calculates each state's rurality. The remaining $12.5 billion, well, it'll go to states that score well on initiatives and policies that mirror the Trump administration's Make America Healthy Again objectives, is how they're breaking this down. The application identifies specific policy goals, things like implementing the presidential fitness test that Trump wants to get back out there again, even the restrictions to food assistance. Then there's broader investment strategies, around remote care services, data infrastructure, and even consumer-facing technology tools that they want to have fixed up. That's the ones that the CMS has identified as symptom checkers and AI chatbots is what they want to kind of implement on that. So states battling it out for that $50 billion to help out the rural communities. So it's trickling down to the states, and the restrictions on the states are big right now. And, they're having to scratch and claw and do all this extra stuff to get all that information out there. And now let's go to the business side of things that isn't affected by government. Well, it is affected by government, but here we're talking about those bankruptcies. JP Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon, well, he said earlier this week that bankruptcies in the U.S. auto market are a sign that corporate lending standards grew too lax in the past decade plus. He said, Jamie Dimon, and JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon he's been at JP Morgan for the long time, and that's the largest U.S. bank by assets, JP Morgan Chase's. He was speaking about the recent collapse of auto parts firm First Brands and then that subprime car lender Tricolor Holdings. Those are officially happened, and they're affecting the markets as well. So the pair of bankruptcies have sparked concerns about the hidden risks involved with banks like JP Morgan. I know Jeffries has a lot of exposure to those loans. Fifth Third Bank, the regional bank, also a lot of loans with Tricolor out there. I think it was $300 million, 250, $300 million is what I was reading from that perspective. So those banks were providing financing for private companies, now being burned by it a little bit out there. In a quarter where JP Morgan handily topped expectations, a lot of that due to the booming activity in institutional trading for those big banks. But questions from reporters and analysts around credit losses, that's what more of the investors were focusing on in this call. JP Morgan managed to dodge losses from First Brands, but it did lend money to Tricor, basically $170 million in charge-offs in the last corner because of that Tricolor bankruptcy. That's all being told to us by CFO Jeremy Barnum there of JP Morgan. If you don't know, charge-offs are happening, and they do happen when a bank recognizes it won't get repaid for the loans that it made. So they just write it off, tax write-off for them and things. So the signal's up there, and the market is concerned about these bad loans in the banking industry. A lot of exposure to these loans, and it starts with these automotive loans. Does it move into housing loans? Does it move into mortgages and foreclosures? Does it move into other big loan items? So that's kind of why the market is down today and showing this negative sell-off as the day has gone on. And it's not all good, just not in the loan industry and the banking industries out there. It's bad in a lot of companies right now as well. We got word that Nestle is cutting 16,000 jobs globally. And Nestle is a Swiss company out there. But it's cutting costs as part of its efforts to revive its financial performance. If you don't know what Nestle makes, they make Nescafe, Kit Kats. They do make pet food, ironically enough, and things that you wouldn't think they would do, right? Coffee stuff they do. And they do a lot of consumer brands. And well, they said that the job cuts will take place over the next 2 years. So Nestle said it's going to be raising targeted cost cuts to 3 billion Swiss francs, which is about 3.76 billion American dollars. They want to do that by the end of next year. They had already planned to do the 2.5 billion Swiss francs, about 3.13 billion already, so they've upped that cost savings amount. Nestle has a whole host of problems in his company. The CEO was forced to resign. They had to bring in another after just a year on the service. They had to bring another CEO in off the board. Then you got all the commodity costs, the tariffs that the U.S. is imposing. So Nestle has announced price hikes over the summer to offset those higher coffee and cocoa costs specifically that they're dealing with. If you remember, President Trump had that 50% tariff on Brazilian goods, things like coffee, orange juice. The Trump administration also imposed that 40% tariff on Brazilian products in July. And that was on top of the 10% tariff imposed earlier on Brazil. That affects the coffee and cocoa trade, which Nestle is heavy into. Coffee habits in the U.S. are almost exclusively fueled by imports. Official U.S. government data does show that Brazil, which Brazil is the world's top coffee producer, supplies about 30% of the American market also. Then you got Colombia at 20%, Vietnam at 10% also. Tariff negotiations continue, and so we don't know how that's going to change, but that's affecting Nestle right now. But also cocoa, right? They deal with a lot of Kit Kats, a lot of candy stuff with Nestle, and the price of cocoa has soared to record highs last year. Inclement weather in the areas where those cocoa trees are, and led to that constrained supply, and companies that deal with chocolate and cocoa were hit extremely hard. Cocoa costs began to fall, though, at the beginning of 2025 as the supply was getting back on course and the supply increased. But cocoa is still more expensive than it was just 2 years ago. So Nestle's having to struggle with that side and everything. And the official word from Nestle is that it's going to eliminate 12,000 white-collar positions in multiple locations. The job cuts are expected to receive annual savings of 1 billion Swiss francs, which is about $1.25 billion by the end of next year. So the company will also cut 4,000 jobs as part of its ongoing initiatives for its manufacturing and supply chain side of things there. So Nestle struggling, trying to get back on the financial side of things and positive side of things with all these kind of unexpected expenses that have hit them over the last year. And then, of course, CEO having to step down and terrible news around Nestle right now in terms of the operations side. It's not any better on the media side, right? I'm in this business and I see where it happens. It ebbs and flows. Well, NBC News has now began their round of layoffs earlier yesterday because they're basically preparing to officially separate from MSNBC. MSNBC has been renamed. It's being renamed coming up as this separation continues on. Impacted NBC News employees, they've been called into meetings to learn their fate, is what the rumors are. That's how it's happening. More than 100 employees are expected to be let go in that new NBC News area. The News Guild of New York, that they represent about 6,000 media workers across the tri-state region. Well, they're obviously not happy with the decision to reduce the headcount among rank-and-file staffers there at NBC. NBC and MSNBC were closely aligned for many years since its founding. The MSNBC, progressive cable network, they relied on news gathering operation and talent of NBC side. They copied off of them, kind of went back and forth on things, but Comcast announced last year it was spinning off MSNBC and other cable networks into a separate company. That's that company called Versant that we've talked about here. Earlier this month, NBC News staffers who accepted a new role at MSNBC, they relocated to their new gig. MSNBC has also stopped relying on NBC News from an operations standpoint. Well, except for the Washington, D.C. based coverage. That's still going through NBC as of now. But that will continue to coexist here for a few more days. October 20th is the cutoff days there. And when that'll stop. Once MSNBC completely distances itself from those NBC Washington, D.C. operations, MSNBC will no longer participate in any NBC News-led editorial calls or even the meetings there either. Once that step is complete, MSNBC will operate independently of NBC News for the first time ever in its 30-year existence. As a result, NBC News has started to reduce its workforce as, they are now back to being independent, don't have to send the news to MSNBC out there. That is happening as we talk about it. And then just an update here on those Rite Aid stores. Rite Aid filed for bankruptcy, closed all their stores. Well, we now have word CVS Pharmacy has announced that it's going to take over select Rite Aid assets across the United States. So that includes prescriptions from 626 stores as well. This came from a press release sent out by CVS Pharmacy. So they acquired stores in Idaho, Oregon, and Washington, some Rite Aid stores they did up there. But as I said, prescriptions in 15 states are switching over to CVS Pharmacy as well. So CVS Pharmacy is gaining over 9 million former Rite Aid and Bartell drug patients with this deal. The company said it hired more than 3,500 former Rite Aid and Bartell drug employees, and that most locations that receive prescription files from Rite Aid, well, they're located within 3 miles of a former Rite Aid store. So you're not going to have to go far if your parents or family members are in those areas. CVS announced the approval of the acquisition of the assets from the bankruptcy on May 21st. Rite Aid, found buyers for customers' files at 810 of its stores, but they did not find them for every store out there, right? 200 other locations did not have anybody buy those files at all for Rite Aid. So we'll have to wait and see here. I know there's no Rite Aids here, but a lot of people from California, from that West Coast, Pacific Northwest. So I wanted to get that update to you out there in case your parents are around, need that information or anything to that effect. Get that information to you. And that's why you tune in here to McCollum on Business. We keep it rolling. And breaking news here as we're going to break. Well, a bill to fund military during government shutdown. Well, it has officially failed in the Senate. So we'll have to see where that goes on the politician side of thing. It was a procedural vote, and it failed in there. So not only government shutdown voting to continue today, also funding of the military shut down as well in that procedural vote. So we'll keep our eyes on that. Come back to another Market Watch as the stocks have just been selling off as the day has continued. We'll talk about that. Talk about J.M. Smucker and Trader Joe's coming our way. A couple local stores for you as well. So come on back. It's McCollum on Business. And we're back here at McCollum on Business. That break, I was getting caught up on all the breaking news happening out there. And so the military in a procedural vote, paying the military amid this shutdown has been shut down in a procedural vote in the Senate. As of right now, updates on the banking situation happening with these loans, bad loans lurking around, and Wall Street reacting to that. And you just saw there in that commercial break, of course, the main event, right? 8 to 10 a.m. live here on Robat TV. As soon as it's done, gets put up, of course, Robat TV for OnDemand. YouTube, which is a free YouTube page, folks, which has all of our produced programs here on Robat TV. Well, they're free for OnDemand there on YouTube. Check that out on the YouTube page. Just search the show's name and it'll pop right up for you all on one page. Then you've got this show here at 11 o'clock as well. And actually, the main event, free podcast system, you can listen and follow to if you like the sports side of things. If you're here for the business, of course, you got McCollum on Business here at 11 o'clock. As soon as we're done, we put it up, Robat TV, and also on the YouTube page for you. Later on today, we're going to have the Look Ahead show, Talladega this weekend, in terms of NASCAR racing. So that will be up and recorded. It'll be up at Robat TV and on the YouTube page, and free podcast for that as well out there on Podbean only as of right now. And then you just saw the ad for the Real Matrix. The Angry Patriot wants to tell you about what's happening in the world and the governments and the worldwide things. If that interests you, well, that's up. Robat TV episode 4 hits yesterday at noon. Every Wednesday at noon, a new episode will be coming out for you on that. Of course, that is also up on the YouTube page and the free podcast system as well. Right now it's Podbean, but it will be expanded after that. And look, it's exciting to do it here. If you want to do a show, you ever thought about doing a show? Well, reach out. You can do it visually, obviously, like we do. You can even do it. We can do the capabilities of just doing a voice podcast for you. If you have, some say, monthly shows, weekly shows, we can get it all set up for you. Just reach out to me. Get you in on here at our new studios in downtown Phoenix, and be great to work with you and help you grow and do your dreams out there and grow your business or your industry you're in. And we'd love to talk to you as we go on. And with all that being said, and we got the regional banks hitting us and everything, the market's selling off. Let's get into that Market Watch. Markets were up earlier, and they just continue to be down. Just to give you an idea here, regional banks are really getting hit hard. Investment bank Jefferies getting hit hard today as well. Zions Bank Corporation, they're dropped down. They're down more than 10% right now. Western Alliance Bank Corp are down more than 9% here as well. Just the regional banking ETF has lost more than 4% here today as well. All but one member of that fund is on track to end today on the red, all because of these auto loans and the exposure to them with 2 bankruptcies in that field and the people that handle that. And that's kind of led that the government shutdown. We'll have to see if the military not being funded in the Senate scares the market some more, because that means the shutdown's not anytime soon. Dow Jones is down 356 points right now. The S&P 500 is down 61 points. The Nasdaq's down 188 points, and then that Russell 2K is 59 points down as we speak here. Bitcoin down here today. Look at this. It was 111,000 this morning at like 6:30 when I was driving into work. 108,392 here today. As that continues, it was at a high just on October 6th, 10 days ago. It was a high of $126,000 at that time, and now down to the 108. So sell-off city is definitely happening on the market today with all the news out there that is hitting the world. So regional banks are something to watch here coming up, along with Jefferies. But it's going to affect some of the bigger banks. Like I said, J.P. Morgan got hit with that Tricolor bankruptcy, that subprime mortgage. They had given them $170 million. They have to write that off. To J.P. Morgan, that's not a lot of money. To the regional banks, it would be. As I told you, Fifth Third Bank, $250 million they have to write off because of that bankruptcy. So that's why the banking question marks are out there. Stocks we're paying attention to right now. Let's look at Salesforce. We haven't looked at that in a while. Last time we talked about Salesforce a month or so ago, they were saying they're going to lay off half of their workforce because they moved toward AI and it's eliminating those jobs. And Salesforce, if you don't know, is a customer relationship software company. Well, they're up today for 3.62%. They said they expect their revenue to be above $80 billion coming up in 2030. So we're 5 years away from it. But analysts, well, they had penciled in $58.37 billion and in that same time frame. And I apologize, it's $60 billion by 2030. I think I said 50. But yeah, $60 billion by 2030. So obviously a couple billion more than what analysts had been anticipating there. So Salesforce up today, 3.60% in a day of sell-offs happening out there. And then next, look at the tool manufacturer, Snap-on. Any mechanics or anybody knows these guys. They're at 4.35% right now. Third quarter earnings topped expectations, and it helped because they had a huge pickup in demand from auto parts companies, but also retail shops started buying more Snap-on products. Snap-on earned $5.02 per share. Expectation was $4.64 per share. They had revenue of $1.19 billion. Expectation was $1.18 billion. $1.16 billion was the expectation for Snap-on. So auto parts companies, which generally they just sell directly to the mechanics. And so they're expanding out there for Snap-on. And then finally, J.B. Hunt Transport Services. They're a trucking and logistics company, if you don't know what they do, but they're up big today, 20.80%. Even with this sell-off happening, they have been in this 19-20% range all day today. Strong, very strong quarterly results for a trucking and logistics company. What can be affecting trucking companies? Gas, costs, etc. Well, in the third quarter, J.B. Hunt earned $1.76 per share. Estimates were expecting $1.46 per share. Their revenue was $3.05 billion. Expectation was $3.03 billion in the same time frame. So JP Transport Services, excellent. JB Hunt, excellent outcome here for them in their quarterly reporting. But what does that do? It means their competition gets a little bit of a bump today. Expectations are more for them. Schneider National and Werner Enterprises, they're both up today, 2% and 3% each for those companies here. So anytime, one company comes in a big deal, well, the other ones get kind of a bump initially while we wait to see what comes up on their reporting later on. And now we'll keep our eyes here on all the breaking stories happening here today in terms of regional banks, the Senate voting, etc. And, here's a story. The U.S. budget deficit, well, it edged lower in 2025. Tariffs, debt payments, both saw new records here coming up. So the U.S. budget deficit, lower this year based off of the tariffs and, debt payments coming in out there. And maybe that's some good news, right? Debt's going, budget's getting smaller, I guess I should say. One thing I know for sure is J.M. Smucker is not a happy company right now. Yeah, the J.M. Smucker company is suing Trader Joe's. Yeah, they're alleging that Trader Joe's new frozen peanut butter and jelly sandwiches are too similar to their Uncrustables brand in their design, but not only that, but their packaging as well. In the lawsuit, well, it was filed Monday in federal court in Ohio. Smuckers said that the round, crustless sandwiches Trader Joe's sells, well, they have the same pie-like crimp markings on their edges that Uncrustables do. And you see the package there of Uncrustables. If you have kids, you've probably seen those. Smucker said the design does violate its trademarks. That's why they filed the lawsuit. Smuckers also asserted that the boxes Trader Joe's PB&J sandwiches come in, well, they say even the boxes violate Smucker's trademarks. They are the same blue color, and it uses the lettering as the same lettering as Uncrustables does on the Smucker's packaging. So they're saying pretty much they've copied everything in this process. Trader Joe's boxes also show a sandwich filled with the bite mark taken out of it. Well, that's similar to the Uncrustables, as you can see on the screen there as well. So Smucker's is seeking restitution from Trader Joe's. It also wants a judge to actually require Trader Joe's to deliver all products and packaging to Smucker's themselves so they can destroy all the products and they don't kind of linger out there afterwards. In the lawsuit, Smucker said it has spent more than $1 billion developing the Uncrustables brand over the last 20 years. Smucker spent years trying to perfect Uncrustables stretchy bread and developing new filling flavors, things like chocolate, hazelnut as new filling flavors. Out there, $1 billion they took to get that crimp style on there for the Uncrustables, and they don't want you copying it identical, which Trader Joe's is allegedly doing. We'll have to keep our eyes on that. And, a lot of people getting away from soda, a lot of people getting away from alcoholic beverages. We talk about that a lot here. One thing we don't talk a lot about, cannabis beverages. So we'll do a little bit of that right now. And a lot of people are reaching for those cannabis beverages out there, if I can talk here. These are non-alcoholic drinks infused with THC, is what we're just going to call it. Yes, that's the main ingredient in marijuana, and that's what makes you actually feel high when you take it. Some variables, some varieties, well, they include cannabis. It's going to be one of those stories, folks. Cannabidiol, which is CBD. It's a chemical compound found in marijuana or hemp that proponents say help relieve pain, anxiety, all those health symptoms that people say they need to take that stuff for. The drinks come in different forms, including seltzers, juices, sodas, and teas is how they can make them. Consumer demand for those cannabis beverages, well, they're growing. Americans, getting away from alcohol and soda, as I said. So according to a July Gallup survey, the percentage of U.S. adults who say they consume alcohol, it's down to 54%, the lowest level, by the way, since 1939. That was when polling organizations first started tracking people's drinking behavior. More Americans also believe even more moderate alcohol consumption is unhealthy, so they're just dropping it altogether instead of just cutting back. Hundreds of brands, small brands, large brands, it doesn't matter. A lot of brands are selling those cannabis beverages, many promising to help take the edge off in social settings. THC beverage sales in the U.S., well, they're expected to grow, right? They were at 1.1 billion last year. They're saying it's going to grow to 5.6 billion by 2036. That's according to Whitney Economics out there. Several THC beverage brands market themselves as non-alcoholic alternatives, and they say their drinks contain 0 calories and 0 sugar. Doctors, well, they have a different opinion on it. They warn that cannabis beverages can come with the side effects, whether smoked or ingested, ingesting an edible, or even drinking a drink with cannabis in it. Cannabis can affect the brain, heart, lungs, mental health, according to the doctors out there. CBS News medical contributor, Dr. Celine Gounder, well, they said, adding that the drug can actually trigger anxiety instead of settling it down. but it can also trigger paranoia, elevated heart rates, and they say some cases psychosis can happen from THC. The potential effects of cannabis infused drinks, well, it can be felt in as little as 15 to 20 minutes, whereas an edible, 30 to 90 minutes for those effects to kick in as well. So a little bit quicker feeling if you do a cannabis drink out there. THC beverages can be legally sold in 44 states in total, 37 states of which allow sales outside the marijuana dispensary system. In those areas, the beverages can commonly be found at restaurants, bars, grocery stores, liquor stores, outside of that dispensary side of things. So, interesting story, interesting growth here with these drinks, and something that I'm not going to lie to you, as an old person, I didn't understand. I didn't even know what they were. I've heard of them, but interesting reading that story. And pay attention to what your kids are drinking, right? Hey, it's a cool little story. If you're a man, you'll get this story. If you're not a man, maybe you'll get it. You know, demolition of buildings are always kind of cool to see and do and everything. And there's a big demolition happening here in the Phoenix area, and it's they're demolishing a part of the old Maricopa County Hospital. It's over there at 24th Street and Roosevelt Streets in Phoenix. And here's the cool part. You see it on your screen there, folks. Yes. One of the largest demolition excavators in the world is in Phoenix, hoping to demolish this building. That's right, guys. Get down there, get your cameras, get down there and take a picture of this. It's a 5,130 BUHD excavator is what they're calling it. It weighs more than 400 tons. It can reach a height of 150 feet. It was scraping the front of the building just south of Roosevelt Street. The area will likely be turned into additional parking. If you know, Valleywise Health built a hospital just around the corner from it there. The more than 50-year-old facility was once known as the Maricopa County Medical Center. And as I said, Valleywise Health, I think it's about a half a block just down the road from where they're tearing this building down. But bigger story here, big excavator, gentlemen. That's right. Let's go. Let's have a viewing party as we watch it knock down the side of the buildings out there. So we're going to go from that to private schools and their rankings out there. Well, there's one here, Phoenix Country Day School. Well, it's up there in Paradise Valley. It has 769 students from pre-kindergarten to 12th grade. Well, it got something else attached to it. 3 straight years here at the top of the Nietzsche's list of the best Phoenix area private schools. The number 2 spot was there, and they just recently released the 2026 rankings. Well, number 2 spot is still Brophy College Preparatory over here in Phoenix. 1,407 students in 6th through 12th grades. They've been second for a long time there, Brophy has. Those two were among just a handful of Valley's top 25 private schools to maintain the same ranking they held last year. So a couple of notable jumps that shook up the order through the private schools kind of kept the Phoenix schools in line. The big gainer among those was Phoenix Bella Vista College Preparatory School. Well, they made a leap from number 6 to number 3 this year, so 3 spots. Redeemer Christian School in Mesa, they made a 3-spot jump this year. They went from number 11 to number 8. The biggest year-to-year improvement, well, Phoenix Christian Preparatory Academy, 6 spots up from number 22 to number 16. And we just saw Phoenix Christian's football team play Scottsdale Christian Academy last Saturday night, and talked to Coach Mike Sheehan about that earlier today. So Phoenix Christian, their move up continues their upward trend for their school. They were not even in the top 25 2 years ago. So you see them making big jumps. Tri-City Christian Academy in Chandler, well, they jumped 4 spots. They went from 16 to number 12. So others that went up, 91st Palm Christian School in Phoenix. The Jones Gordon School up in Paradise Valley made improvements as well. So all of this, the latest top 25 included a new school. Shiram Torah High School for girls in Phoenix also made the list for the first time this year. So if you're looking for private schools and in the ilk of that, well, check out that Nietzsche's list there. Just came out 2026. Give you an idea of where you might want to take your kids if you want them to go through public schools. And I, for one, say, why not put up with the heartache and pain that a public school gives you? We'll be back tomorrow, folks, here at McCollum on Business, 11 o'clock on Friday. Finish out your week strong. Don't forget, Pit Stop coming up here in just a couple hours. It'll be posted here at Robat and, of course, on the YouTube and free podcast systems. All of it's there for you, folks. We'll see you tomorrow, 11 o'clock, McCollum on Business.